This is the early afternoon of the 23rd of January, 2026. A clip put up by Cash Jordan. Title, Ilhan Omar ready to flee as FBI investigates 3,500% net worth boom. Place for 20 minutes. Let's have a listen.
Someone's in a lot of trouble.
Ilhan Omar under investigation after racking up millions while she was in Congress. Follow the money? Well, that's precisely what the House Oversight Committee is doing. They are probing squad member Ilhan Omar's skyrocketing family wealth, Jesse, especially in the wake of that $9 billion, some would argue $19 billion, social services fraud scandal that exploded in her district in Minnesota. The Oversight Chair, James Comer, says his team's lawyers are exploring the extraordinary step of subpoenaing Omar's spouse over his curious business practices. Republicans want to know how the Somali-born Omar and her politically connected husband, Tim Manette, went from being nearly broke to being worth around $30 million in just a year, according to her 2024 disclosure forms. Quoting Comer now, there are a lot of questions as to how her husband accumulated so much wealth over the past 2 years.
0 to 30 million in 1 year, while the rest of us have an affordability crisis.
Manette and his partner, Will Taylor, back in 2022, formed an investment firm, Jesse, named Rose Lake Capital. They had $42 in their bank account at the time, but in a year, up to $25 million, according to Omar's filing. By the way, he also has a wine business that went from next to nothing to millions on its
How'd
books.
that happen?
Not surprisingly, associates were so perplexed about the irregularities, they brought information and attention to the feds to, look into it.
Whistleblowers came from her husband's company and told the feds.
The question is how. Here's what we know. Omar's husband, a former political consultant, owns a venture capital firm based in Washington, D.C. and a winery in California.
I didn't know that firm was in D.C.
Take a look at these numbers. In 2023, Omar disclosed a maximum of $50,000 in assets at the winery. The next year, Dana, that number increased to $5 million. Meanwhile, her husband's company, Rose Lake Capital, reported a maximum of $1,000 in assets in 2023. The next year, it was $25 million. Despite that, Omar denied being a millionaire.
It can't be a coincidence that the same congresswoman who pushed schemes that enriched criminals in her home state just so happens to be married to a financier who's got a firm in the nation's capital that just explodes and gets rich overnight.
Next year, it was $25 million. Despite that, Omar denied being a millionaire earlier this year, posting on X, quote, I barely have thousands, let alone millions. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer tells Fox News an investigation is underway, writing, quote, the committee is working on addressing ethics concerns regarding Representative Omar and her spouse, and we hope to have an update soon. But Omar says she's being targeted.
Oh, she does.
Ever since I've gotten to Congress, they have been doing these sort of weird ethics investigations.
Then don't be
None of them
unethical.
have yielded anything because I have been as transparent as I can be.
Then there's nothing to worry about. If she's been as transparent as can be, and she's never done anything wrong, there's nothing to worry about, right?
Elon Musk says Omar committed fraud, while President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, she should be in jail or even a worse punishment, sent back to Somalia.
Wow.
Omar authored the Meals Act in 2020, which loosened oversight on food programs during COVID. Federal prosecutors say one of those programs, Feeding Our Future, stole $250 million through fake meal sites.
And these were programs that she got behind, run by scammers. Did those scammers pay her back, is the question.
How about Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar? In February of this year, she shot down claims that she's actually a millionaire. She wrote, my salary is $174,000 before taxes. I don't have stock or own a home. And I'm still paying off my student debt. So if you're going to lie on something that is public, maybe try checking my financial statements, and you will see I barely have thousands, let alone millions. Well, people have checked the public records now. Ilhan Omar apparently has a net worth upwards of $30 million. Somewhere between $60 and $30 million. And get this.
So she says come check me out. I haven't done anything. And then people check her out and they figure out that she's filthy rich suddenly. How does this not launch an investigation? How do you think you're going to get away with this unless it's your plan to leave the country or something? But here's where the real connection is. Look at this.
We see a web of connections between them and those directly involved in the fraud. For example, Ilhan Omar, alleged enabling introducing the 2020 Meals Act, which was ultimately subject to fraud. Held a campaign victory party at the Safari restaurant. That's where one of the men who run that restaurant is has associations to the convicted individuals. And then there's Tim Walz, House Oversight Investigation role in his role as governor. Or Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. His job is to enforce the law in Minnesota, but instead he's getting donations after meeting with the Feeding Our Future representatives. The Feeding Our Future, the biggest.
These people all got paid off.
This entire theft ring.
It is a theft ring. And here's what's really crazy. So she's associated with people that have been convicted in fraud schemes that she helped set up and pass. That's like the biggest red flag of all. And the president just weighed in on what he thinks about all this.
I always hate to see this. Ilhan Omar, she comes from Somalia, a backward country, probably the worst country. They say it's the worst country in the world, if it's a country. I don't even think it's a country. There's no organization. They don't have police. They don't have military. They don't have anything. But she'll come here, and then she wants to tell us how to run our country. The Constitution says that I am entitled to this. I can't stand her.
Okay, so when you've got a federal investigation with House Oversight Committee involvement and agencies like the FBI, and then you got the president singling you out for corruption, what are you going to do if you don't want to admit the corruption? What's your option?
In the last few weeks, we've certainly heard in cases where people have been picked up.
You say it's the federal government.
Lawful
That's the problem.
Status in this country. We've heard a Sudanese immigrant who went in for his scheduled green card appointment and was told that he wouldn't have his
She's drumming up support.
And was picked up, sent to Texas. Our office has tried to get information about his whereabouts. I know that Senator Tina Smith's office has tried to get information on his whereabouts. We also know that his family has...
This is the only thing she wants to talk about. She just wants to talk about the injustices of the administration that could end up holding her accountable for criminal activity.
In Minnesota, the crime is incredible. The financial crimes are incredible. Nobody talks about the fact that $19 billion at a minimum is missing in Minnesota, given to a large degree by Somalians. They've taken it. Somalians. Other people work it out, and they get them money, and they go out and buy Mercedes-Benzes, and they come from here. I was told that Ilhan Omar is worth $30 million. She never had a job.
Wow.
She's a crooked congressman.
Yeah.
That was President Trump today on the Minnesota frauds.
Insane.
He's calling out Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
$30 million is
her net worth
insane.
is soaring to $30 million. Congresswoman Omar has not been
implicated
in any of the state frauds so far. She previously she's denied being a millionaire, saying her salary as a congresswoman is $174,000 was her only significant income. Let's bring in from the House Judiciary, Congressman Darrell Issa. So, what do you make of Nate Foley's report here that it went from assets of around $51,000, but by 2024 it was listed to up to $30 million?
Let's figure this out.
What do you think is going on here? There's reports Omar and her husband could get subpoenaed to testify for House Oversight.
He's going to have to testify.
Well, and thanks for having me on. There are two possibilities, and they're pretty straightforward. Underreporting in the past and or a sudden surge that is beyond any possibility. Wineries do not get profitable and big and worth a lot of money quickly.
Right. It takes years to accumulate millions of dollars in wealth, not 2 years. Not when you start at zero and then all of a sudden, boom, you're one of the richest people on the planet. And there's definitely something up with her husband, because look at this. His website removed a whole bunch of names of people from it that worked for his company. Why would they do that?
Venture funds don't see that kind of a growth from virtually zero to tens of millions of dollars overnight.
35% increase.
So she's going to have to answer basically two questions. Yep. Did you underreport in the past? How did you get from where you were, whatever that was, to now? She could have filed a corrective report and said, I underreported in the past. She hasn't done that. And those are some of the things that we as congressmen are used to having to do if we discover a discrepancy.
So the significance of what you just said, we're trying to figure out what's the end game.
Remember, the end game here was supposed to be Tim Walz as vice president, right? That was the end game. The end game was get filthy rich. Who cares how it happens? Because soon our political party's going to control the entire country. And guess what? We're going to control the investigations. We're going to get to drive around the investigation van and say, you'll hand Omar over here. Let's go over here. Let's go find Trump again. That's what they're going to do. That was the whole plan here. And now it's blowing up.
I'm here for lawmakers. Is it just ethics violations over bad disclosures, or is it something deeper? I mean, oversight staff and lawyers at House Oversight, they're looking at our financial disclosures, business formations, valuations. Your point's well taken. The rapid valuation growth of her husband's ventures, that VC firm and a winery, these valuation increases shot up within a very short period of time. That's very rare. We haven't seen that.
It's unheard of, and particularly as a Californian, I can tell you, even California wine can't go up that quickly. Look, there's no question at all. There are some serious ethical questions at a minimum, and then some legal questions beyond that. What is the source of it? And at a time when tens of billions of dollars have been stolen from the American people, we'd like to know clearly, did any of this boomerang out and come back? Those are fair questions in light of this a meteoric increase, but also the likelihood that there were assets that were underreported in the past.
It's not possible.
And, she may not like it, but
because here's the thing with this idea of underreporting in previous assets, their own records say that they didn't have much. $50,000. It's a lot of money. But compared to the $30 million that they're worth now, to have $50,000 in one company, that's not really a big deal. And what, we're supposed to believe that she could have potentially underreported millions of dollars in assets that just magically appeared? Like, then my question would be, okay, if they had all these assets before, and those were underreported, and then they got the $30 million, well, how did they get those assets? Because the means to obtain those doesn't look like it was there for her or her financier husband.
This house that we appropriately live on, when you make $174,000 a year and you have to pay for two houses, you don't get rich quickly. And if you do, and we have had this in the past, it's right to investigate. And we've put members of Congress into prison in the past, a number of them during my tenure.
Prison!
So she wouldn't be unusual.
It wouldn't be unusual if she went to prison. Fascinating. But she's not the only one who might go to jail in the near future, if convicted.
Essentially, they're going to be investigated for possibly obstructing federal law enforcement here in the land of 10,000 lakes. Let's take a look at the list. We're talking about Governor Tim Walz, as well as Attorney General Keith Ellison and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Governor Walz pushing back and using it as an opportunity to invite President Trump to Minnesota to see what's happening here for himself. The Attorney General writing, less than 2 weeks ago, federal agents shot and killed a Minnesotan in broad daylight. Now, instead of seriously investigating the killing of Renee Good, Trump is weaponizing the justice system against any leader who dares stand up to him. President Trump has also threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota, but in an exclusive interview with News Nation's Katie Pavlich, the president says he doesn't believe that's necessary as of right now.
It might be at some point. It is actually very common, with me, they'll make it like a big deal, but it's been used by over 40% of the presidents during the term. It's something I would have no problem doing if I think we needed it. We have great people at ICE. They're strong people, they're smart people.
So here's the thing. A very interesting dynamic has emerged here, because we've got the entire state of Minnesota, all the leaders, they're all getting investigated all at the same time by the federal government. Here's the problem. If the Insurrection Act happens and Trump sends federal troops into Minneapolis and into the entire state, and they enact law and order, they take over, the local government has basically been displaced. If that happens, the things that will get discovered are going to be so frightening and so shocking that even more people are going to go to jail. The leaders of this place do not want that.
And I don't think it's necessary yet. You have the agitators, anarchists. You know, I watch sort of everything. I see it all. And I see people screaming, shame, shame. You know, this is not people that are like living in Minnesota. These are professional, paid people. They're like
and now
actors.
They have to call their own mobs back.
Now the Department of Justice will investigate whether or not these people conspired to prevent federal immigration enforcement from happening, although it is still happening day in and day out.
And the fascinating thing about this is now we've got a situation where the mobs that are out there riding on the streets to protect federal fugitives, to protect scammers, and even their elected officials, they're now at odds with their own sanctuary leaders. Watch this.
We did hear that the Department of Justice is now investigating Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey. We spoke with some of the protesters here earlier who say that their state officials actually aren't doing enough.
He's gonna do what he's gonna do regardless, and like there was a part of me that wasn't gonna come out today because I was gonna listen to our governor, but the governor and Mayor Jacob Frey have proven that like they're not for the people.
How is
and like I can't just sit at home.
They're not for the people. So the sanctuary mayor of Minneapolis and Governor Walz, they've been out there riling up the mobs for weeks, and now the mobs say, hey, they're not with us. You know why that is? Because they've been forced to deploy their own National Guard and their own sheriffs to start making arrests. And now these sanctuary rioters, they're doing battle with their own leaders because their own leaders don't want the federal government to come in with the Insurrection Act and totally turn this place upside down. But while the governor and the mayor are calling for the mobs to stand down and not give Trump what he needs to send in the troops under the Insurrection Act, guess who's out there keeping the whole thing going, working against them?
This is an all hands on deck process, and in Minnesota, we know how to protect one another, and I have been incredibly proud the way our neighbors have shown up for one another. It's been beautiful to see, and that's...
So, if you're going to get out there and say that mobs destroying your town is a beautiful thing to see, if you're going to say that to your constituents, who also voted for your governor and for the sanctuary mayor over here, they're getting a lot of doublespeak. They're going to be confused. Do they follow Ilhan Omar, who says that this is all beautiful, or do they listen to Tim Walz, who says, hey guys, maybe we should chill out a little bit. Maybe we should not give Trump what he needs to send in the troops, because Governor Walz knows that the second the troops show up and they start pulling boxes of evidence out of even more of these fake scam centers, there are going to be real problems. But it looks like Ilhan Omar knows that the longer the mobs keep up their resistance, the more time she's got to figure out what to do next, whatever that is.
Kind of resistance is why ICE agents seem so angry and agitated, because they have never experienced the kind of love that we experience here in Minnesota. And we know that they are going to disappear one day, but we will be here caring for one another and carrying out policy with love here in Minnesota. This is
That's her plan. She just told us her whole plan. Her plan is to outlast the federal government. Her plan is to be there after Trump's gone so that she can maintain everything she's worked for, right? You see what's happening? She wants to hold on to her power. But the real problem is the fraud scandals in Minnesota look like they have now spread themselves out throughout the entire country. Listen to this.
What makes you think that?
Well, now you're seeing, since I've posted that video, lots of other people have started to go to other locations, for instance, in Ohio or in Maine or in California. They're also seeing the similar fraud take place in other daycares, for instance, in a lot of other locations.
Yeah, I have a particular interest in California, being from that state, and we know that there's been a lot of fraud. There was $32.6 billion that's been confirmed in unemployment insurance fraud. There's 1.2 million fraudulent community college applications. Have you gotten any sense, or have you seen any signs there that sort of are similar to what aroused your suspicions in Minnesota?
Yeah, and fraud in California might be worse than the fraud in Minnesota.
What makes you...
And that's the thing that these people are really fighting to protect. That's the thing that they're really scared of. If Ilhan Omar has benefited in some way from corrupt, fraudulent programs that she enacted and championed in her state, you know the same thing's happening in other states.
Well, $24 billion went missing for homelessness. They've been trying to build this train for years, yet there's
that's a scam in California too.
Fires.
Yeah, those are good points. So you look at let's run through a couple of those because I mentioned the areas where we have confirmed fraud, but then you also have these areas where you have so much spending, and then we look at what results from that spending, and there's nothing.
That's fraud too, man.
$24 billion in homelessness, and yet the homeless population went up, and a state audit found that they couldn't even figure out where the money went or what the outcomes linked to that.
They don't care where it went.
Is that something that is kind of a red flag for you?
Yeah, it's a major red flag, and you don't even have to be smart to be able to know that that's a red flag.
Well, unfortunately, our state legislators haven't managed to figure that out, or at least the governor hasn't. So what are you saying about him?
They're not smart. No, but yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, and that's what we saw in Minnesota is how complicit the government has been in enabling this fraud to happen.
And that's the entire story here. You've got scammers teaming up with the government to create this industrialized fraud complex that is all over our entire country. And right now, in the middle of midterm elections, we're just scratching the surface of it. We don't even know how bad it is. There's stuff going on in Maine right now that'll make you shake. I'm going to cover that soon. I'll see you in the next video.
I think Trump's going to cancel the midterms. And the reason he's going to cancel them because he knows it'd be an absolute bloodbath. So he'll just cancel them. You think not? I guess we'll soon see, won't we? And Elon, send that bitch to Somalia with her 2 husbands. That's just sort of what I think.